Continuing on with the hand, we are going to actually continue to extrude out of the wrist. Now, sometimes it's easier to just build a box and build the hand from scratch, starting with a box. But we're actually going to just keep extruding out here. It works just as well, it's just a different way. So again, just like with the elbow, the knee, the hip, we need a little bit of extra flexibility here in the wrist. So as we extrude, we're going to make sure that we keep an extra couple sets of edges here to make it so that the wrist can flex. Now, the wrist being a hinge joint has quite a bit of flexibility, so we do want to make sure, because we need that a little bit more narrow at the wrist there. All right, so as we continue now to extrude, we get one more segment right there before we start pushing out toward the palm of the hand. Now, as you can see, we've got about the right shape here, but the palm box is, like that implies, a bit more of a box. So we want to move some of this down so that those vertices are helping to define a bit more of a rectangular kind of a shape as we get into the palm here. So that was a bit too round at the wrist. That should work pretty well now. All right, so back to our extruding process. And we'll push that out. Now, I'm going to go all the way here to about where the fingers come out. We're going to grab our top vertices and we're just going to move them all the way to the other side of the palm. We'll make sure that lines up in about the center line of the hand. And this one's in a pretty good spot here at the edge. All right, now I can just shift select here. And we're going to use our connect tool to add a couple of segments. So as I do that, it just kind of regularly divides in there. I can shift them one way or the other, but none of that's necessary. All right, now we'll accept that, and then we'll continue to push things around and sculpt. So now here in the palm, we can bring these into the palm because the palm is a bit more concave, where the back of the hand is convex. So if you look at your hand from the end, basically at the fingers, there's a bit of a curve that goes, from the thumb side to the pinky side. So we'll grab these three vertices and we'll actually move them forward slightly so that we end up starting to define that curve. All right, that'll work for now. Now we need to start to divide these polygons so that we end up with 4 fingers. Because right now, if we extruded these out, we only have 2 fingers. So what we're going to do, we're actually just going to grab these 3 edges and we're going to cut. So as we connect these 3 edges with a single segment, at first here we're going to mess up our quads. So for now, I'm not too worried about that. But we have to remember, going in here, that we've definitely changed the structure of our mesh. So this one polygon right now has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 sides. And that's not always a wonderful thing, but like I said, we'll fix it. So now we're going to go back to polygon, and I'm going to start extruding out my fingers. So the fingers, if I extrude all of them at the same time, I'm going to end up getting fingers that are all connected together. Or I can try extruding by polygon, but if I extrude by polygon instead of the group, each one of them is actually going to end up as its own extrusion. So since I need them to stay together in pairs, I really can't work that way. I can try local normal. Obviously, that's not going to work either. So there's no way that I can extrude all 4 fingers at the same time. So let's cancel that, and then we'll go back and deselect. So I alt-click those 2 and those 2. Now, if I go back to my extrude tool, we'll leave it by group, much smaller extrusion, and then I can extrude 2 fingers at a time. As long as they're not adjacent polygons, I can at least extrude 2 fingers at a time. Now, another way to approach this is that if I extrude and build 1 finger, I can pretty much just copy and attach it to the other spots on the hand where the other fingers exist. So I don't even need to build all 4 fingers individually. I really can just build 1 and use it in place for the other 3. So now as we build the finger here, again, we need to worry about the volume of that. So I need to round this out. Let's go back to polygon, and I'm just going to work on just the index finger. So now our next extrusion will go all the way to the first bend. Scale that down a bit. Second joint. Scale it down a bit, and then extrude to the end. Now, with the fingers, it is nice to have a bit of curvature in the finger from the front to the back. So as we move and rotate with some soft selection turned on, we'll be able to get a bit more of a natural curvature to that finger. Let's turn soft selection off. And now, in order to kind of create the volume that we need at the points of the finger where it's flexible, we need to add a few more segments here. So we're going to go to edge, and we're going to shift select around to grab that entire loop, and then we're going to use chamfer to chamfer that edge. Not quite so far. So we want to open that up, but we're going to add a second subdivision. So we get 3 edges right next to each other. That's going to give us the flexibility we need to bend the finger. So we'll accept that. We'll go back here to the same thing. So now my chamfer should have the same settings. If I just turn on the chamfer tool, I have the exact same settings to start with, and I can just accept it. Now, since my edge constraint is turned on, when I go to move these vertices, they will stay on the edge that they're currently on. I don't want all those. So I can move them back, kind of get them lined back up where they go. Now I don't have to worry about them separating from the volume of the mesh. Otherwise, when we move things, it can be interesting to try to keep everything lined up where you want it. So as I grab all of those edges, we're going to use connect, but I only want a single edge. So as we go in there, let's actually cancel that. We're going to use flow connect. So we'll go to loops, flow connect, and that is added in and adjust the volume to maintain the roundness of that. All right, so go back to vertex, grab this vert in the middle here. Let's move that down a bit. All right, for our first finger here, this is actually pretty good. We're going to grab and we're going to slide this all down the finger a bit because it's a little bit far back from the tip for the first knuckle. And that looks pretty good. A little more evenly divided that way. We can bring that back, and that back. We're going to tighten this up a bit from where our first extrusion was. So we've got, again, a little bit tighter flex at the hand. All right, next we're going to be moving on and copying that finger to the other spots on the hand.